Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you, and happy Eid al-Fitr for you, for everyone in Malaysia, in our friendly country Malaysia, to the Islamic world all over the world, and to of our channel. This is Elias Zananiri welcoming you live from Palestine. I'm happy to start this show with you with a guest, a very dear guest of us, His Excellency Mr. Ambassador of Palestine to Malaysia. Mr. Walid Abu Ali, who is now joining us live from his office of the embassy in Kuala Lumpur, and we will be discussing in the coming 60 minutes or so all sorts of issues that are related to Palestinians living under Israeli occupation, to Palestinians and the Muslim or Islamic the Muslim people or citizens who live now in Palestinians and otherwise living in Malaysia, and how they spend their holidays, and how Palestinians in the occupied territories have spent their holiday. Mr. Ambassador, you are very much welcomed here with us on BBTV channel, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear brother Elias from Jerusalem, from Al-Quds, from Palestine. A very good evening to all viewers in Malaysia and all over the world. Let me start with Salamat Hari Raya to all Malaysian brothers and sisters. Eid Mubarak to all Muslims around the world. And كل عام وأنتم بخير لأبناء شعبنا الفلسطيني في الوطن وفي الشتات. It's an honor for me to be with you tonight to celebrate, to gather moments that we feel together, that we are with our brothers and sisters in Palestine who have been struggling for more than 7 decades for one main objective, which is the Israeli occupation. Our people who have been struggling and fighting the Israeli occupation for more than 7 decades, looking for the day to host and welcome Malaysians and all Muslim brothers and all those friends of Palestine from different religions, different nationalities, to host them and welcome them in a free Palestine, in an independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. And to have a free moment for all those Palestinians, whether they are in the Israeli custody, whether they are abroad and they are struggling for the right of return, for all Palestinian refugees, some of these refugees who are on the Malaysian territories, and they are waiting the day to go back and live free in Palestine. Thank you, Elias, for the introduction, and let me again just focus on the Palestinian community in Malaysia, who I categorized them into 3 main categories. Category number 1, we have about over 1,000 Palestinian students, undergraduates and postgraduates, and they are here joining the Malaysian universities, and luckily, exceptionally, they are treated the same as Malaysian students. So we are thankful and grateful to Malaysia when they do treat Palestinian students the same as Malaysian students. So that's category number 1. Category number 2, we have about 1,200 Palestinians registered with UNHCR as Palestinian refugees, and they are waiting to be accommodated in a third country, because Malaysia is not a member of the Rome Treaty, and it's not a country for accommodating refugees. So they are transiting via Malaysia to be accommodated in a third country. Although we as an embassy insist that we have to help them just temporarily to live where they are until we achieve the right of return, so they can go back and live in Palestine. The third category of Palestinians, small businessmen who are trying to invest and trying to do some business in Malaysia, and some of these young Palestinians who were forced to leave Palestine, whether from Gaza or from the West Bank, and they join, some businesses in Malaysia, and they are trying their best to succeed. Although Malaysia is too far from Palestine, but this year we succeeded in signing a joint MOU between Palestinian Business Council and the Malaysian Business Council to encourage both Malaysians and Palestinians to import and export and exchange products from Malaysia and from Palestine. Later on, I will be explaining how we as Palestinians celebrate Eid al-Fitr in Malaysia and how we as a community acted during the holy month of Ramadan, how we helped the poor Palestinians in Malaysia during the holy month of Ramadan. Again, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And on behalf of the Palestinian Embassy, I'm grateful to PBTV, and I'm grateful to our correspondent in Al-Quds, Mr. Yas Zananiri, for the coverage you managed to do from Al-Aqsa Mosque, from Al-Quds, where Malaysians had increased their awareness about what's going on in Palestine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And I'm being told that we were in the meantime, yes, referring to Al-Aqsa the month, the holy month of Ramadan, brave to speak that the Israeli army, Israeli government has given to the police and the army to stay away from the mosque for the last week or so was not really a break, because they used to storm the smoke every morning. But anyway, literally speaking, or the kind of smoke screen that the Israeli authorities use is that they say that they gave it for the Allah without any infringement by Jewish zealots. But the fact is, as of tomorrow morning, we expect of attempts by extra right-wing Jewish zealots in Israel to storm, to want to start doing it, celebrating so-called independence, which is an Nakba day for Palestinians, which on the 14th of May 1988, when Ben Gurion proclaimed the creation of the expense of the Palestinians, who at the time 700,000 at least were kicked out of their homeland for the new state to take over. And that agony that started even long before with the operation in 1917 has going on and on and on until this very moment. And speaking of the holiday, speaking of belief in God, praying to God, this is an occasion for Palestinians and Muslims and Arabs worldwide to hope that the occupation is going to end soon, because I think we are, not only I'm very much certain that we are sick and tired of the ongoing Israeli occupation. We want to know, we want to draw your attention to what will happen tomorrow and the days to follow, because it looks like there is a tendency within the Israeli government, or at least part of the Israeli government, that wants to create chaos in the region in order to save the skin of the incumbent government in Israel, who has a very weak coalition and that can collapse any moment. So we need to be, we have to be, the whole world has to be very careful and to watch carefully what Israel is doing. I believe that because of the crisis in Ukraine, it can go ahead on the rampage and do whatever it wants to do against the Palestinians. Is busy with Russia, with Ukraine. No, world humanity applied the same way that the West wants to apply it today against Russia. They should have already applied it on Israel with the AIDS, and the time goes on. This is I want to be talking about holidays and Eid al-Fitr and how happy people are, but in fact, if you look deep into the heart of every Palestinian, you see that heart is split between two parts. One part is happy because of the holiday and hopes for a better future, and the second half is weeping because of this suppression of our people at the hands of the occupiers. We see now
Yes.
our friend, our boss, Dato Sham has joined us.
Assalamualaikum to Mr. Ambassador,
The microphone is
Honorable
yours.
Mr. Ambassador. Assalamualaikum to Mr. Ilyas from Palestine. Thank you for having you in BBTV today. I would like to apologize for some technical issue that we are facing between our live streaming Malaysia to Palestine. If you can hear the audio from Palestine, it's a bit not clear, but you can understand what Mr. Ilyas is talking about. Anyway, Salam Eid Mubarak to everyone in Palestine and also to Mr. Ambassador. Today we are putting together between the Palestine Ambassador in Malaysia, Mr. Walid Ali, and Mr. Ilyas in Palestine. The Malaysian and the world today wants to know what is going on with the community of Palestine in Malaysia and what is going on the community in Palestine during this Eid Mubarak. So I'm giving the opportunity to Mr. Ambassador to brief us the status of the community of Palestine in Malaysia during this Eid Mubarak and things and moving forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan, for that. Let me just again repeat that our Palestinian community in Malaysia, which used to be around 5,000 before the COVID-19, and during the COVID-19 the number went down a little bit. So I don't have an exact figure, but we are around for 3,500 to 4,000 Palestinians in Malaysia. During the holy month of Ramadan, the cooperation between some Malaysian NGOs, the government of Malaysia, the Palestinian community leadership, the Palestinian Students' Union, and the embassy, we managed to share with our poor Palestinian families some food baskets. And I have here to salute and highly appreciate what the Malaysian Business Council had contributed to the embassy to help the Palestinian families with some food baskets. Some Palestinian businessmen who had contributed some daily iftar meal, which was distributed in our Palestinian students in different universities around Kuala Lumpur, in Jaya, in Kajang, all around the system. We managed to have an assistance from our presidency. The president had contributed with some cash money, which we distributed in our students outside the capital. And we managed to help, since I do cover Thailand as well as Malaysia, we managed to help our community in Thailand. We have about 100 families in Thailand. We had provided them with some cash money to help them during the holy month of Ramadan. During the last 2 days, including today, we managed to visit some Palestinian families, and particularly the elderly Palestinians who are unable to come to the embassy. Together with a group from the embassy and from the community leadership and the Students' Union, we managed to visit families where they live around Kuala Lumpur, and we had presented them with some contribution cash money to help them to celebrate Eid the same as their Malaysian brothers and sisters. So, according to our culture, although we are in Malaysia and we are happy to do what the Malaysians do, after we offered the Eid prayer in the morning, we started our trip to visit the Palestinian families around, and we greeted them. I know in Malaysia they do the open house for the rayas, and they do offer food for all those who, accept the invitation. We as Palestinians managed to do some Palestinian cookies, and we share the cookies with all our Palestinian families who are in Malaysia. All in all, we try to adapt to the Malaysian culture, but we try to maintain our traditions and our culture in Malaysia. That's all I can say of what we did during the Eid al-Fitr. Did you hear me, Dato? Hello? Can you hear me, Dato? I can't
What is
hear
the
you.
update in Palestine? What is the update in Palestine now, Mr. Ilya? I can hear you very clear.
In Palestine, yes, okay. In
I can
Palestine,
hear you
for
very clear, Mr.
the third
Ambassador.
day of a holiday, which is today, Wednesday, is the third and last day of Eid al-Fitr in Palestine, and day like yesterday, morning hours, the city of Ramallah, for instance, was looked like a ghost city. Very few people went out of their homes in the morning. Only towards the noon they started to move and do a bit of shopping, and later on, late in the evening, we saw thousands of people visit shopping malls to spend more time with the kids, with everybody else. But also, what is interesting is you see all these people into the shopping malls, fancy places, fancy clothing shops and food and whatever. But when you talk to shop owners and you ask them about the level of their sales on that day, and you find out that their sales were not up to their. There is a serious economic problem in Palestine, a serious financial crisis for the government itself. The government is ripped off by the Israelis, who collect on behalf of the Palestinian National Authority and deliver and transfer this to the Palestinian government. The Israelis have been chopping off because it says that Palestine pays for the families of Palestinians who were either killed or incarcerated in jail, wounded and maimed in hospitals, and so on and so forth. Israel wants us Palestinians to forget other people who gave the best of the best years of their life fighting against the occupation, aspiring to liberate their country and acquire their independence. They want us to punish these families by not even paying them the minimum any family anywhere in the world is entitled to. And just imagine the absurdity of the situation of these Israeli conditions is that even the extreme right-wing activists, it was in history that an Israeli prime minister assassinated and by an Israeli that who's sitting still in jail, continues to receive social security, all sorts of government funds for him and his family. He was even allowed to sleep with his wife in jail to bring a baby. This kind of democracy that Israel speaks about, this is the kind of inequity, total inequity, how they are treated by the Israeli occupiers and how the Israelis are being treated by them. These are issues that reflect the problem which we Palestinians live, because wherever you go, under every stone, you look at that stone and you find a story of oppression, a story of torment, a story of house demolitions, a story of stealing by the Israelis away and something that the whole country, the whole world almost has using administrative detention, except for Israel. And what does administrative detention mean? It means that someone can be picked up and thrown into prison for 3 months, 6 months, to be renewed and renewable automatically for years and years and years. These people are something. If somebody does anything wrong, he would still be entitled to fair trial. But in fact, we Palestinians under Israeli occupation do not have any trust in the judicial system in Israel, because this judicial system in Israel is multicolored. It deals with us on two different colors. The Israeli law that there is supposed to be that is enforced in the occupied West Bank is a military one against Palestinians, and is civil against Jewish settlers who live in settlements that were built illegally under international law over our land, on our land in the West Bank, and previously in Gaza, and they are being treated as if they are pure Israelis. This is in contravention of international law, and nobody says anything to Israel about that. Now, going back to the shopping and the celebrations, as we said, it's some kind of a perplexing situation for Palestinians, because on one hand you have kids, you have family, you have to appease them, to give them the sense of there is a holiday, that there is future, there is hope in the future, and you cannot just lock them behind the agony of occupation and say, no, we cannot do anything, we cannot take you anyway. But also remember that these shopping malls are almost the only places where people can, or families can take their kids and go out, because if suppose they have enough money to leave and spend their vacations elsewhere, they cannot go even to cross the green line, the so-called green line, or the border that existed before the occupation of '67. They cannot cross and go to the Mediterranean Sea, where they love to be at the sea, but they cannot go there. There is a total generation, or even now 2 generations of Palestinians who haven't seen the sea. Now, how would you celebrate a holiday when you cannot go, you cannot fly abroad, you cannot go to the sea, you cannot visit the city of Jerusalem? There you face a tall wall of restrictions by the Israelis when you want to go to Jerusalem. And this is nonsense. Why? Because you are a Palestinian, and Palestinians, as if Jerusalem is an off-limit area for them. This is nonsense. It's illegal. It's unjustified by all means. We're watching now pictures from last night at La Casa Mall on the outskirts of Ramallah in Palestine. And yes, there were so many cars. There was no place for cars to park, and people were in thousands walked into the shopping mall, watching around all sorts of things, mostly window shopping, because their purchase power is becoming very limited because of the economic plight. The economic plight is not only because of the tax revenues that Israel is not paying the Palestinian government back, but also because of the tight restrictions that Israel imposes on Palestinian economy, on Palestinian right to import and export. That the PA is an area of is sort of a sovereign area, but this is all nonsense. Israel continues to have the overriding security control over every little thing that we do. Palestinians under if I may give you an example of how dire the economic condition in Palestine is, when we look at the basket of customs that Israel enforces on the Palestinians, based on the Paris Protocol of 1995, it is the same basket of customs that Israel has. And now imagine that with the same kind of customs paid for one merchandise that comes from abroad, that is imported from abroad, a Palestinian whose average income is sometimes 20 or 30% only of the average income of an Israeli, but he was surprised that an Israeli pays in Tel Aviv or elsewhere inside Israel. This is totally unfair. We pay for a 1 liter of petrol $2, and same as the Israelis. But the average income of a Palestinian here is 20 to 30% of the average income of Israeli. And this tells you how tough life is. And there is no one that can live without petrol for his car or her car. There is no country that can live without petrol that is needed for power stations, for all sorts of life in Palestine. And this is, again, one of the problems. So you look at the pictures here, and you see the kids are playing, and these kids might be enjoying almost the only thing that their families could afford spending on a day like this, because they don't have that kind of financial resources to do everything that they promised their kids, or everything they wanted to do for their kids. But at the end, a holiday is more for kids to celebrate, and is more for adults to remember those that they lost in the previous rounds of conflict with the occupation, and also to hope that they would still be able to shape a different future, a better future for their children, for the upcoming generation, the new generation, only because this is the legacy of every Palestinian. I always remind the whole world about what once Golda Meir said. She was Israel's prime minister after the June 1967 war, when she said that the elderly of Palestinians will die and the young Palestinians won't remember. And she built on that, believing that the Palestinian issue would fade out. And fortunately for us, and I don't care whether it was unfortunate for Israel or not, but fortunately for us, this never happened, because we know that we belong to Palestine, from Gaza to the West Bank to East Jerusalem to inside Israel. All is mandatory. That was known as mandatory Palestine during the British Mandate era. But this is a historical land of Palestine. Yes, there are claims by Israel. Yes, there was a resolution by the United Nations in 1947 to partition the land of Palestine into two countries. But Israel cannot take the part that the 1947 Resolution 181 of the United Nations gave her, and yet claim the second half of Palestine, which is supposed to be the state of Palestine. But Israel is doing this only because she knows that it has the full support of the United States, of the West at large, and because of this support, it can get away with whatever it does against international law, against the Palestinians, against the Muslims. Imagine that today, even congressmen, senators have sent a letter to the U.S. Secretary General, Secretary Blinken, asking him to put pressure on Israel to stop its sacred places in Jerusalem, Muslim and Christian alike. Those congressmen, they include senators from the Democratic Party as well as from the Republican Party. This tells you how bad the Israeli measures against the holy shrines in East Jerusalem and the old city of Jerusalem are, that even supporters of Israel in the Congress could not bear that anymore. They cannot tolerate it any longer. And this is also another indication. The problem is the world's cries of agony that come out from Palestine, and they mostly listen to the crocodile tears that they see in the eyes of Israeli officials every time they show up on camera screen. I can say that children who are now skating there would never forget those moments, and they will always remember them. When they were kids, they came to a place like this to play, while at the same time they had the chance to play, but possibly they did not have a chance to do more than that. They couldn't go to the sea. They couldn't go and visit inside Israel. All of this is something that they will grow up later on, and they will know that half of their country, more even than half, it's 78% of Palestine is where Israel exists today, and the rest is occupied, is the occupied part of Palestine that was conquered in 1967, and that includes Gaza Strip, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank, or the West Bank including East Jerusalem, more correctly to speak. And this is it. The point is, throughout the almost now close to 30 years of negotiations with Israel after the Oslo process started, there hasn't been a single Israeli leader who would be brave as it. We are going to a two-state solution, and this is a real problem. Israel wants to have it both ways, to keep the whole land of Palestine, and also wants peace with everybody. And I don't think that this will ever work. Thank you. Mr. Ambassador, you wanted to say something?
Yes. We are, with your permission, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
We do.
Of course, we are close to the 15th of May, where the Israelis believe it's their independency, and we believe it's the beginning of our catastrophe. I believe the international community, represented by all international NGOs and institutions, witnessing on daily basis the suffering of our Palestinian people under the Israeli occupation. I think the international community witnessed continuously the violation of the international law on the ground in Palestine, whether it's in Gaza, where about 2 million Palestinians have been suffering for almost since 2007, have been suffering the siege by the Israelis, and they are in need of the very basic humanitarian needs. 1.5 million Palestinians within Israel who are struggling and fighting the apartheid and the Israeli discrimination because they are treated as second-class citizens in Israel. Almost 3 million Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem who are suffering the Israeli occupation, the Israeli checkpoints, the Israeli violation of international law through the Israeli sectors, the terrorism of the state of Israel against our Palestinians in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, international community double standard against the Palestinians, and we have been victims of the double standards for the last 7 decades and more. And almost half of our nation, half of our Palestinians who are in the diaspora, who have been waiting to enjoy the right of return, to go back to Palestine to live in peace. Israelis and the international community know clearly that any settlement, any peace and security in the Middle East can only be enjoyed and can only be achieved when the Palestinians have their independency, have their right to live free in a democratic Palestinian state where all religions enjoy freely to participate and to practice their religions in Palestine without any pressure from anybody. I think the suffering of our Palestinians, Christians and Muslims, during Easter and during the holy month of Ramadan was an evidence for the international community to know how our Palestinian daily suffering was during the holy month of Ramadan, during the Eastern celebration in Al-Quds and in Turkey. So it's the responsibility of the international community to put an end to the Palestinian suffering and to give Palestinians the right to live in peace in an independent, democratic Palestinian state. That's the message as an ambassador that I need to make it clear and to ask Malaysia and the Muslim Ummah and the international community to make sure that they support Palestine to achieve this, to enable Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and enjoy peace in the Middle East. Thank you very much.
Mr. Ambassador, there is a our friend Dr. Sham is not with us because he still has some technical problems. So we will continue this show, and it would be nice if you can tell a bit more about the kind of relation that exists between Malaysia and Palestine. We know that it's a history of friendly and fraternity between the two countries. But if you could give us more spotlight on this, please.
Well, I'm happy that you raised this question, Elias. And since this is my fourth year in Malaysia, and even before coming to Malaysia, I know very well that the Palestinian cause is the issue for every single Malaysian. When Malaysians have some differences among them, Palestine unite all Malaysians, regardless of who is sitting behind the steering in Malaysia. All prime ministers in the past, up until now, of Malaysia, a top priority issue in their foreign policy is the Palestinian cause. I think Malaysia was the only country during this holy month of Ramadan where 3 official statements condemned the Israeli violation in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Al-Quds, where the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Dato Seri Ismail Sabri, the Foreign Minister of Malaysia, Dato Sri Saifuddin Abdullah, and the Minister of Defense, Hishamuddin Hussein, released 3 clear, strong statements. I think 3 statements to come out from one country was only Malaysia. So Malaysia and the Malaysians, whenever the issue of Palestine is raised anywhere in Malaysia, in any state in Malaysia, the capital, outside the capital, from north to south, the issue of Palestine is the issue living in the heart of every single Malaysian. And we are, as Palestinians, grateful to Malaysians for their ongoing support and solidarity towards the Palestinian cause. The amount of support we receive as Palestinians in Malaysia, and our people in Gaza, our people in Al-Quds, always respect, salute, and admire what has been shared with them from Malaysia. So thank you, Malaysia, for all what you are doing to Palestine. And we look for the day when we do host and welcome Malaysians to pray together in Al-Quds, in Al-Aqsa Mosque, inshallah.
Yes, praying in Al-Aqsa Mosque is important, and I remember quite a number of Palestinian officials have urged Muslims all over the world to come to Palestine and to go to Al-Aqsa Mosque, despite the reservations that they might be Israeli on the checkpoints. But visiting Al-Aqsa is a spiritual thing that is highly appreciated, not only by Palestinians, but also by who can make his way to Palestine and visit the holy shrines in East Jerusalem and all over Palestine. It's very important also for us to, and I have been, since I joined this channel, I've been trying to explain to people and understand from Palestinians in the street, normal Palestinians, what they think about Malaysia. And they ask, why would a channel in Malaysia be interested in what is happening in Palestine? And I said, this is part of the historical relationship that existed between the Palestinian people and the Malaysian people, and that that Malaysia feels very close to Palestine, even closer than many other countries who who proclaim to be Arab and Islamic, but they rush and sign all kinds of normalization agreements with Israel at a time that Malaysia did not even welcome any step like that, because the Malaysian government and the Malaysian people understand that Israel should not be retributed for what it does by normalizing ties with us, with her. And Malaysia, like every other Muslim country back in 2003, when they attended the Islamic Cooperation Organization, the Islamic, they changed the name now. The Islamic Cooperation Organization in Tehran, and endorsed the Arab Peace Initiative. It was one of the countries that made it very clear that any normal and political ties with Israel will only follow the Israeli withdrawal from all of the occupied territories and Israel's recognition of the state of Palestine, and not vice versa as being done today by some of the Arab countries. I think also even those Arab countries that rushed under the term of President Trump to normalize ties with Israel as if problem and no occupation, whatever, but then they found out today that they may have erred, and they're trying now to back down. And we look at what some of those countries are moving very cautiously when it comes to the United States, and believe that maybe the countdown for the U.S. has started, and the emergence of a new power in the world that would be equivalent to the superpower of the United States. In other words, the return of the balanced, the polarization in the world, as opposed that existed during the days of the Soviet Union, and all of a sudden collapsed, and the United States became the only superpower in the world, and that showed how dangerous it is, because you cannot leave the destiny and the future of mankind in the hands of a single president who believes that he is the superpower of the whole universe. That's another issue anyway. But we come back to Palestine, and I understood from many people that they would really love to see people from Malaysia coming to visit Palestine, to mingle with Palestinians. We understood from His Excellency, the ambassador, that there are Palestinian students studying and postgraduate students in Malaysia, and it would be nice also to have, maybe think of some kind of students exchange programs between Malaysian universities and Palestinian universities. We have very good universities here in Palestine, and of course I know that there are very good universities in Malaysia, and there is a lot of things that can be done in order to promote the very warm and close ties between the Palestinian and Malaysian peoples, because this all serves the principles of fraternity between peoples, the principles of fraternity between Muslims, and principles of fraternity between Arabs, Muslims, Christians, and Malaysians and Palestinians, and what have you. I think. Mr. Ambassador, would you like to say something before we close this show?
Yes, let me just again highlight and re-emphasize Malaysia. It's the dream of any Malaysian to carry on the Hajj and the Umrah visit to the two holy mosques in Saudi Arabia, Mecca and Medina. And I always try to raise the importance of keeping in mind visiting Al-Quds as a third mosque. The message of Prophet Muhammad والسلام, of the famous trip of Al-Isra wal Mi'raj, Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could easily could instruct Prophet Muhammad والسلام, to climb to heaven from Mecca. But the message to the whole Muslim Ummah, that when he asked and instructed Prophet Muhammad to travel through Isra and Mi'raj to Al-Quds, and then he was the Imam of all prophets in Al-Aqsa Mosque. That shows the importance of the first Qibla. Al-Aqsa Mosque was the first Qibla. So visiting Al-Quds and to encourage Malaysians and all Muslims and Christians as pilgrims to go and visit Al-Aqsa Mosque, help Palestinians to continue and stay where they are and continue their struggle against the Israeli occupation. When you visit Al-Quds, you actually help the Palestinians who are in the old city of Jerusalem to remain where they are. Because one of the Israeli strategy is to evacuate the holy city of Palestinians and replace them with settlers, with Israelis, to change the geography and the demography of the holy city. So we highly request and appreciate any efforts in Malaysia to encourage Malaysians when they travel and visit Mecca and Medina to have within the same package to have Al-Quds included. It can be coordinated through the Malaysian embassy in Amman. It can be held through a special coordination together with the Jordanian Awqaf, the Palestinian Awqaf and Jordanian Awqaf share the responsibility of monitoring and controlling Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Muslim and Christian holy sites in the old city of Jerusalem. So my request and my message to brothers and sisters in Malaysia, keep Al-Quds as a target to be included in your package when you decide to go and offer Umrah or Hajj in Mecca and Medina. Again, thank you Malaysia, thanks for Malaysians for your ongoing support and solidarity to the Palestinian cause. Together, I'm sure we will achieve what we are looking for. We will achieve an independent Palestinian state to live in peace and to be open to all humanity, to enjoy the visit of the oldest two capitals, Al-Quds and Bethlehem. Whether those who knows or do not know, as much as Al-Quds is important, Bethlehem is the capital of Christianity, and it's open to all pilgrims, whether they are Muslims or Christians, to go and visit Palestine. Thank you very much for PPTV. Thank you, Ilyas from Al-Quds, and we look forward for more and more programs, cultural, sports, educational. You mentioned the cooperation between Malaysians and Palestinian academists and universities. We have signed so many MOUs between Malaysian universities and Palestinian universities. We do have joint programs in so many different fields, and we do have a cooperation on the academic level, educational cooperation between Malaysia and Palestine. We do have an alumni of Palestinians graduated from Malaysia, and they are in Palestine, and they are somewhere in other countries like Europe and America. We are proud of all graduates, whether undergraduates or postgraduates who succeeded to achieve their degrees from Malaysia. We do have Palestinians who graduated in Malaysia on their PhD programs or master programs, and they are lecturers in many of the Malaysian universities. All in all, I'm happy as an ambassador of how we are treated in Malaysia, how our community is treated in Malaysia. Again, I appreciate all the efforts made by Malaysians to Palestine. Thank you, Ilyas, again, and look forward and more programs. Eid Mubarak again to you all in Palestine, and Eid Mubarak for all Malaysians. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for being with us, and appreciate the time that to our audience and our viewers all over the world about the issues at stake. And ladies and gentlemen, again, we thank you and we wish you a happy Eid al-Fitr, and we wish you the best in the future holidays and in building your country more and more and more, and making Malaysia one of the role models for other countries in the Islamic world. And we will be back soon with more and more reports and stories coming out from Palestine. This is Ilyas Palestine. Thank you. Thank you for being with us.